Caroline is a single mom and with 3 children. She went over a very difficult period in her life. She even wanted to take her own life, but something stopped her.
One thing that we need to be mindful of with domestic abuse and relationship breakdown.
Now you are a positive psychological. How long are you doing that?
With working with the East London Rape Crisis Counselling, they've told me that...
You've been abused yourself?
Yes. Abuse isn't just a one sex against the other sex, you know.
There is a much higher chances people take their own life. Have you thought about taking your own life?
When someone's manipulating you mentally and emotionally.
So how would you get people to talk to you about it?
I currently work more online because...
Caroline is a single mom and with 3 children. She went over a very difficult period in her life. She even wanted to take her own life, but something stopped her. And now she's helping people like yourself, people who are having a domestic abuse, and trying to get them help. You need to watch this interview, either watch it or listen it, because if you are maybe in those shoes, that you are going through some tough times and you're having some abuse and you have no one to speak to, this is a great way to start. So listen till the end. So thank you very much, Caroline, for coming. So would you mind sharing a little bit about yourself, about your background, and maybe something, what is it you do right now?
Amazing, yeah. So currently I am a single mum with 3 amazing children living with my live-in tenants as well. So I'm helping my tenants to recover from substance abuse after domestic abuse. So that's quite an powerful movement to be able to live and work integrated like that. You know, I feel like that connection is quite powerful for me at this moment. I used to be a London bus driver for nearly 2 decades. So driving around the city of London, yeah, in a double-decker bus, right? Driving down to this London Bridge.
Wow.
And,
I admire bus drivers because I'm driving a car and I don't want to be driving that in this traffic. Like, I don't even live in London, but like in Edinburgh, I'm like, oh, and sometimes I see the bus drivers and the turns, I'm like, oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah,
wow.
Definitely. It's definitely a skill, but ultimately everything is a skill once you give it the amount of hours and dedication that you actually need for it. Like, yes, I have driven for about 30,000 hours, so I'm unconsciously competent in regards to driving, and especially like large vehicles as well. And it has helped me over the years to actually create confidence as well, you know, because and it's really nice as well when I would tell people I'm a bus driver and they were like, oh my goodness, that's so big, like how can you do that? It's so amazing that you could do that. And it's like, it feels easy for me because I've always practiced it. Do you know what I mean? So but conversely, that is ultimately all that confidence is, right? It's just being able to continue to practice something until it becomes so when you're learning something new, you become unconsciously, like when something you want to learn comes into your conscious, you become consciously incompetent about it, right? And then as you continue to practice in that uncomfortable feeling, then you become consciously competent of it. And then you consciously practice that confidence until you can become unconsciously competent, where it becomes like a muscle memory. And you're just like, you can just see the path ahead of you and you don't even have to like really focus on it per se, because your subconscious understands how it works. And that's, you know, whereas I said I was a London bus driver for nearly 20 years, but now I'm a positive psychology coach and narcissistic abuse recovery specialist. So ultimately, my own mess from my own domestic abuse situation meant that I no longer had the capacity to actually drive a bus because you know it's, as you say, it's quite a lot of work and what have you, and then. So I've chosen to retrain in that and understanding the neuroscience behind how your body works as well, and to reintegrate myself after that domestic abuse and ultimately losing my job, which all culminated in me losing my self identity, and I'd lost the confidence to go out after a sexual assault as well, like because. One thing that we need to be mindful of with domestic abuse and relationship breakdown, when a relationship is no longer successful with an abusive person, is that like post-separation abuse ramps up to at least 70% likelihood. And this is often, you know, a caveat here to, you know, put in to say this is sensitive information, that, you know, quite often people are, as a result of a relationship breakdown, likely to experience extreme danger. And so, you know, apparently like 70% of homicides are domestically abusive related, you know. So, you know, just to put in a caveat there to bring awareness to that.
Okay, so let me ask you. So you've been a bus driver for nearly 20 years. Now you are a positive psychology coach. How long are you doing that?
Yeah, so I retrained in 2023 to do that. And I also trained in the modality of brain spotting, which is a neuroscience-based evolution from EMDR and somatic experiencing to help integrate using the optic nerve to connect into those trauma capsules that are actually stored in the body. Physically, you know, as much as they are stored mentally in your mind, but they're also stored physically in your body to create a behavioral reaction response to keep you away from danger, to keep you safe. You know, like, so like reactive abuse is sort of a trauma like that. And also like the high anxiety and agoraphobia, not going out, you know, and even potentially suicidality is a reaction behavior to trying to keep you away from another danger. And our nervous systems ultimately are just primed to keep us alive in this moment, right? So I just want to be able to take this opportunity as well to say that in my experience with working with East London Rape Crisis Counselling, they've told me that apparently about 70% of people that have been sexually assaulted experience a catatonic freeze response, where essentially your body goes into a flop nature, like your mind is cognitively going, but you actually, your limbs are disconnected from what your mind wants you to be able to do, because your senses in that time believe that it's safer for you to go into that flop zone, that floppy frame, to keep you alive in that moment. That would create less damage potentially than either fighting or trying to run away. And so yeah, so but when I experienced that, as you say, that was one of the elements that broke my own self-trust as well. You know,
and so you've been abused yourself?
Yes. Yeah.
You've been, and so that was like going from like a longer, like it was in a relationship, or what was that?
Yeah, as you say, it was my family relationship with a partner, involving my children as well. Yeah. And really, you know, I think that it's important to say that even does not mean okay. Like 50-50 is not necessarily a fair split, you know, because like going through divorce, quite often people think, oh, well, it's going to be 50-50. But I think that it's important to tell people, especially if there are children involved, that that the courts are going to be looking to support the children sustainably moving forward. And so that you might potentially not be coming away with a 50-50 balance, because it's fair for the children is to be able to support them with themselves moving forward. And so because I've managed to be fortunate enough to have the social services engage with me, and I've won the final financial order from my divorce at 85% in my favor in order to release the equity from the family home, so that I can now buy and have bought my new family home completely outright. So, you know, as you say, I've got that success in knowing now that I've got a secure, safe home environment for myself and my children moving forward that doesn't have a perpetrator potentially antagonizing.
Perfect. So you said you have 3 children. What are girls, boys, both?
Yeah, son, daughter, son. Yeah, I was very lucky.
Okay, amazing. And so with that, now when you are doing the coaching to help these, are you focusing on both women and men, or just women with that specific abuse?
I genuinely, I work with both sexes, because ultimately abuse isn't just a one sex against the other sex. You know, narcissistic personality disorder can affect both sexes equally. Okay. So it's not about like trying to cast blame or shame. It's about understanding those maladaptive behavioral sequences that people, because they're trying to protect their own selves, they somewhere along the line they've learned that inflicting pain gives them power. Okay. And so, you know, ultimately, whatever the kind of pain can be, whether or not it's trying to remove your children from you, or remove your home from you, or financially abuse you so that you don't have like the finances to be able to support yourself moving forward, or isolate you so that you have nobody that feels safe to be able to turn to. I've also worked with quite a lot of different people that have experienced assault and in their childhood as well, so helped people to recover that are now experiencing like suicidal ideation due to the nature of sexual assault as children. And I think it's also very important to understand that 90% of rapists know they're victims, and that for victims as well, as you say, it's normally the person that's within the trust circle. You know, we tell our children to worry about stranger danger, but it's ultimately about taking responsibility and understanding that, unfortunately, quite often children will be, you know, susceptible to these kind of uncomfortable positions and experiences that are beyond their capacity to understand as a child. So, you know, it about taking responsibility and ownership of ourselves as our caregivers, to see not behaviors in our children have changed, and then go, what's happened to you, rather than going, why are you acting like that, you know, and trying to blame and shame the individual. So, well, what happened to you? And finding that compassionate awareness and space. And also as well, you know, accepting your own complacency potentially, or enabling behavior to have allowed that something like that, you know, and then take responsibility and do something about it, which can be really difficult.
I was wondering, because obviously you said you experienced this abuse, and you also mentioned a lot in here about, you know, people, obviously there is a much higher chances people take their own life. Have you thought about taking your own life?
Yes.
What stopped you?
So actually, it was a random passerby that wanted to get past me. It was just that single interaction of actually being spoken to, of can you move out of the way, while I was obstructing the pathway, while I stood looking over the bridge to the railway tracks, and this person just was like, excuse me, can you move out of the way? And then that broke me out of this, and then I suddenly realized that I had been entranced by that concept of taking my own life, where I blended with that part of me that had got to a point where it was felt insurmountable, with the cognitive dissonance, the word salad, the cherry pick bombing, all of the different types of abuse that narcissistic control had inflicted upon me, plus also, you know, the overwhelm of like being a parent and working a full-time job, and also a high stress job as well. And it was just that single interaction of somebody asking me like a question, you know, and it ultimately, with the training of suicide awareness, you know, there's a lot of free training that you can find out there online, and it is about that kind of asking a person that direct sort of question. Are you okay? Can you move out? Like, can you ask me the question twice as well? Quite often, if you're actually seeking to find someone that's going to be open to exploring this with you. So yeah, that was what happened to me. And then
it was like breaking the pattern.
It is ultimately, and finding a safe space with a person that is compassionate and has enough time to be able to sit with you and explore that with you as well. Because what I've learned with doing my own brain spotting on that part of me as well is that it's quite often not necessarily a part that wants to just end it. It's a part that's kind of going, I don't know what the next option is. And it's essentially a ask for help. You know, quite often people that do that don't actually want to end it. They just don't know how to ask for help, because it's difficult to be vulnerable. And it is also difficult to find a space where you can be vulnerable as well. Because I was, you know, it was a pathway that I thought I could be vulnerable with that person in my life that I thought I could trust. And then that completely got shone round onto me and used as another form of abuse. So it just, yeah, it's ultimately, you know, it's about that self-preservation. And life is a curious, beautiful thing. It's like, if you didn't have the opportunity to choose, what choice would it be? Right. You know, and we always so one thing as well that is really interesting as well, like when you have that lens of that perspective of how do I do it, it's really curious how you can just see so many different ways to actually do it. Like your subconscious always just gives you what you're asking to look for, you know. So when you're looking for that potential danger of a way out, you know, it's like, yeah, I can see it here, I can see it here, I can see it here. But then also it's also another kind of protective mechanism, because it's also saying to you, well, you could do it like that, so be careful of that. You could do it like that, so be careful of that. You know, so when it's about giving yourself the opportunity to see the positive in understanding all of those extra elements to safeguard yourself moving forward.
Yeah, totally. Like you mentioned about, I was asking about also about the sex. So who do you help? Because I was in the situation like that, but I was teenager, so obviously my brain wasn't developed as much. I would say I was maybe 17, 18, and up to 19. I was in a toxic relationship with someone, and basically I loved her, but there was this mental kind of abuse of like not having any friends, or even like, you know, if you would ever leave me, I would take my own life. So basically, I was in that space, and it was very difficult. So I also was thinking about these thoughts about of taking the life or something like that. But obviously, I was young, and so I was just asking about, like, you know, because it might, the abuse sometimes is not the physical, but the mental. It's obviously, I think it's sometimes even worse, right? When people do some mental tricks on you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely hear you, and thank you so much for being so honest and brave and sharing that with me. I appreciate that. Yeah. As you say, those no visible bruises, scars, are very difficult to kind of come to terms with, kind of understand, because essentially what happens, as you say, when someone's manipulating you mentally and emotionally, it's giving you cognitive dissonance, like your ability to futurecast and see where your path is going to be giving you. When someone's reacting and responding and castrating your ability to grow and move forward, because they're manipulating you, as you say, with those kind of heartbreaking threats, as you say, your brain is trying to rewire to work around how to best navigate that. And when a person's brain is in trauma, it uses about 60% of your physical daily energy. Like if you're in your parasympathetic nervous system, in your rest and digest, you're in a healthy place, in a healthy community that's being supportive, your brain will use about 25% of your daily energy. Okay, just to function. So that gives enough energy for the rest of your body systems to be able to operate. But as you say, when you're in that psychological abuse pattern, because you're overworking with your hypervigilance, anxiety, as you say, trying to people please in that person to keep them alive as well, to support them. And it's like we're naive to it as well. We don't really understand how to work it. But what it does is the brain is then using, a lot more energy than its designated amount, its fair share per se. And this is where we're now seeing that a lot of like inflammatory diseases are coming up, you know, like an IBS and other pain systems, because ultimately if your brain has been taking it more than its fair share for a prolonged period of time, over an extended period of being abused, those systems just haven't had the right amount of operating power to be able to heal themselves. So this is where we're getting that. Now we're seeing that medical pandemic of illnesses as such, you know, of people, like they would call it like people pleasing pain, you know. I don't know, as you said before, it was about like the Diary of a CEO, when he spoke with Gabor Mate about like, I worry about people pleasers. If you've seen that, you could check in with that. That was quite an interesting concept to see that correlation there between trauma and
yeah, I think I've seen, and my wife read all the books from Gabor Mate, so she's always feeding me with the information. I'm like, you read those books and tell me, and I read the business books and I tell you.
Yeah.
So,
fair enough. Yeah, absolutely.
you don't need to read both or everything. So yeah, because there's so many books. And so obviously, because of your experience, what you've done, you decided to help people with that, right? And also, you mentioned about practice. Obviously, that's how you become confident. So, how confident are you now with delivering that to people, the help?
Oh, absolutely. I'm very confident with delivering brain spotting to people and giving them the skill set and the space and in place to be able to, hold those negative emotions that often society wants us to shun and reject, and but by trying to press a lid on a boiling pot, it erupts in places, doesn't it, where you don't necessarily want it to erupt. Like, especially like, again, with that bus analogy, if I had a person on the bus that was, being very aggressive and argumentative and disruptive, as much as my professionalism in that moment would be to, shut it down, follow the protocol, and dissociate essentially from my emotions to be able to handle the problem. Ultimately, we are emotional beings. So if I don't know how to down regulate that from my nervous system, I just suppress it and push it away and like try to forget about it. But it never does it? It comes up with other places. It comes up with a temper tantrum with the children not putting their shoes on quickly enough, or, another environment where you feel a little bit safer to be able to express yourself, but it often comes out in a negative way. And we don't often understand that the trigger for that in that episode was much, much, much further down the path, previously. And so with brain spotting, what we do is we use a wand, or a pointer, those the neuroscientists like to say. And we track through your optic field to be able to discover micro changes within your facial features and also within your body to find those sensations of activation of distress, SUDS units, subjective units of distress within your body that correlate to eye movements. And then that's how we get into that memory capsule, and then we release somatically the stored trauma in a safe environment, rather than, as you say, letting you just kind of go out and hope it will all just be okay. Because ultimately addressing and being accountable and responsible for your own emotional well-being, as well as your physical health, is an individual's responsibility. It's not anybody else's responsibility to take the offload of your anger, aggression, frustration, fear. Ultimately, it's ours to contain and look after. So yeah. So
and do you, obviously, when you do the coaching, you do that on one-to-one basis, right? But do you also hold some kind of a groups where people can just come, see how it is, and they can basically, you hold that space for them, they can open up and share about their journey?
Currently, for myself, I don't really do very many workshops in that regard, because, again, as you say, with the sensitive nature of that kind of topic, quite often it's important for a person's nervous system to feel massively contained and comfortable and safe in that environment to be able to get into those deep places. And often when there's more than two people in that conversation, your nervous system isn't really tracking on what's going on. It's tracking your danger level of the group. Because when you think about like your cognitive awareness processes between 60 and 80 bits of information per second, like in your in your prefrontal cortex. Okay, if this was the brain in the palm of your hand, right? Prefrontal cortex process it. And that's phenomenal, right? It's like a microscope, like really just examining things. It's amazing. But then conversely, your subconscious is processing 11 million bits of information per second. So that's your limbic system and also your reptilian system, like going down into your vagus nerve. And when you understand how your nervous system down regulates and can co-regulate with your practitioner as well, it's quite often better not to work in a group environment to go down regulate with that. So yeah.
Okay, good, perfect. And do you also go and do any speeches somewhere, like where you would where basically you can chat the basics, and after how do you get clients for something like that? Like, because like you said, people obviously they are vulnerable, they don't want to open up, so how would you get people to talk to you about it?
Yeah, amazing. Thank you for that question. Currently, as you say, it's sort of like I've been working within some closed groups that have already sort of established those kind of
Mm-hmm.
connections. And I've also been working quite closely with my NHS social prescriber team as well.
Mm-hmm.
So like as you say, getting referrals that way. Yeah. So at the moment as you said, I'm still kind of in a startup environment. I've not been doing it that long. So just
Mm-hmm.
organically allowing my base to work up. And I've got some other therapists that my modality collaborates quite nicely with their modalities. So they'll give me referrals with regards to that as well. Yeah. But
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, as you say, when you get the opportunity to spread the message, there is ways to connect with me via Facebook and also my very dodgy websites. Because as you say, like when we have our skill set, IT is not
Yeah,
necessarily one of mine, but we're getting there.
that's okay. So you just need someone with the skill set to make the website better.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. And to be honest, I mean, there are people like we use one guy just on the side note for the website. He's based in Bangladesh,
Yeah,
and he's actually coming for my mastermind in June in here to Scotland, flying here, and. And when I got my first website built in here from UK person, it was like £2,500, and
yeah,
yeah, good website, but a lot of money. And the guy he built the same website for £500, and I'm like, okay, fair enough. So he's
yeah,
building now all of our websites and managing them because it's it's much easier. So I know some people are. I spoke with those people. Some people say like, my website's not up to date, or it's not good enough. I'm like, yeah, sometimes we overthink it. Sometimes we think it's too expensive, but sometimes it can be very affordable actually. Um,
yeah.
so if you would ever wanted to upgrade, let me know. I'll connect with that guy. Um, yeah, and so that's perfect. I think, like you said, like the referrals obviously is great. Like you are getting people involved with you. Do you also pass like if somebody contact you and you are like, let's say, no, it's not what I do. Do you have to have someone other people where you basically pass them this business or?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. As you say, I think that collaboratively working with your competitors per se is actually a really, really beautiful way to elevate everybody's businesses. And as you say, ultimately, not everyone can be a specialist in narcissistic abuse. So there are other people that are specialists in, divorce and mediation and other things. So it's about understanding your peer group. And every month I go to a monthly brain spotting peer group that I
Mm-hmm.
host in order for the brain spotters to hone their own skills and come together and collaborate and mediate with each other's
Mm-hmm.
experiences. So yeah.
And those meetings when you do, can they be on online or do you prefer like that all in person because it's very, like vulnerable space and or what is it okay both ways?
Well, as you say, I mean, all therapies can work both in person and online. I currently work more online because
Mm-hmm.
the nature of working with domestic abuse and sexual assault, quite often you're working with people that are agoraphobic and afraid to kind of go out at the moment. And so by not giving them the dysregulation of actually traveling to a location,
Yes.
can already start getting deeper into the work rather than having to spend that first few
Mhm.
10, 15 minutes of getting a person to downregulate from the nature of the traveling initially.
Mhm.
So so I work through Zoom and internationally as well. So I've got people that I work with in Australia and America and yeah.
Okay, perfect. So you need to work with them at night or in the morning because they have a night or the morning. It's more
Yeah.
difficult, but yeah, you make it work for of course. And if somebody wants to, let's say, work with you, like, is there an amount of sessions you basically say like, okay, you need to have a minimum 6 sessions in order to see any result, or basically people can pay per session and see how it goes?
Yeah. So again, given the nature of trauma, everybody's trauma is different and we can never really
Mm.
know how long something is going to take. I mean, and ultimately healing is a lifelong journey, right? New level, new devil, as they say. But yeah, I do work like with individual sessions for people to be able to just potentially experience it and see whether or not they feel like it's going to work in. But ultimately, I prefer to start off with a 3-session block because that first session is normally your nervous system just kind of going, what's going on here then? I don't like it. This feels weird. I've never connected with my senses and emotions before. I've always been in the head. So normally that first session is kind of just about experiencing what it feels like. And then invariably that second session is when we'd be able to get into that deeper work. And ultimately, once you've started in the journey, that even though the session ends, the subconscious processing doesn't stop. You've just allowed it to, start to dissipate and release itself and reintegrate with your neurology and somatically to be able to downregulate those quick fire reactions. And then ultimately, invariably with the third session, that's invariably where we start to look at doing some expansion brain spotting with regards to elevating, because when you've taken away that experience, that trauma, that sort of default setting, what do you replace it with? Because if you've given yourself a void, right? So then with the expansion brain spotting, we're then looking to how do you want to create and mold yourself moving forward with that calmness, that relaxation, that interconnectedness, and giving yourself that opportunity to feel into those and extend that in not only in your subconscious, but also extend it out into your presence and make it felt in your body as well. Those sensations of how does it actually feel to feel calm? Especially if someone's never felt that, if they've always been in that brace, if they've always been chasing and, feeling afraid, it can be very difficult. You need to be able to feel it to know it.
It's like remind me like when we do speak with some people about like a bad habit, right? So let's say they smoke and they want to stop. So obviously there's a process, but let's say they'll stop smoking, but after they'll, instead of creating a new empowering habit, they'll just put a new habit which is not very good. Let's say they overeat or something. So I think it sounds very similar, like when you get rid of something which is, there in their mind regarding that scenario, it's important to put them something new, which is empowering, moving towards, right?
Yeah. And ultimately as well, it's every person's choice. It's not like for me to tell them this is how you is. It's giving that person that empowerment to go, how do I want to feel about it? And quite often, as you say, people that have been in those kind of situations and that abuse never really know how to feel. They've been told how to feel quite often, so giving them that opportunity to say, well, how do you want to feel can be quite huge. But again, you just start with small little simple steps. Maybe it's just starting with, you don't necessarily want to go all the way up to happiness. You just want to go with, I don't want to feel like I want to do that today. And that's enough. And with brain spotting, it's just about noticing what you notice. That's simply it. Giving yourself the ability to notice if you're feeling judgment, to notice if you're feeling self-criticism, and giving it that compassion to say, there is no right or wrong in how you're feeling with this. You're just noticing how it is to feel that, and that's okay. That's enough sometimes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So just two more things before we wrap it up. One thing is, you based in London still, or you moved?
No, I'm in Corby, but yeah.
In Corby. Okay. I'm just was wondering, but based on what obviously you are doing and you are sharing the message, and after helping people, are you a member or do you know organization called Professional Speaking Association? It's called PSA.
PSA. No, I haven't.
Okay, I'm just sharing that because a lot of people, they don't, because it's a non-profit organization, so they don't really spend any money for marketing, but they are based in UK for I think like over 20 years or something like that. And I joined them like 2 years ago, and I go obviously to events in Scotland mainly, but basically there is 12 different regions, and I think for something what you do, it'll be good to check them out. You can come as a guest for first time, but even if you join for free, it's very, very cheap. It's non-profit. And what is good about it, that you basically have opportunity to showcase what you speak about. You can get the feedback, but the thing is more people can know about you.
Oh, wow. Yeah, definitely, Vincent. Thank you so much.
It's really good for exposure for what you do, especially if you are just starting out, like 2023. So with that specific topic, and that's actually really good for coaches and people like that, because ideally, I feel like if you do something like that, like let's say you mentioned Gabor Mate, so he goes, not only speaks on podcasts, he would obviously have an event and he would speak there, share his wisdom. And after maybe there's 100 people and maybe 10 people go and work with him in one-to-one or with his team or whatever he does. And it's just when you can share the message with more people, it's easier to get this few which actually they need that help. So I think check it out. It's called PSA. The website is thepsa.co.uk, and you can check the region which is closest to you, and you can just go as a visitor. So I think that could be good for you. And just to wrap it up, like last thing, what I would like to ask, if there is someone who feels that way, but they are still scared to, let's say, get in touch with you. I'll include all your details in the section. But like you said, like those people, they usually are, they don't want to share, they don't want to open up. That's the problem. They don't want to ask for help. Mm-hmm. So how, if somebody would listen to that, like how they can overcome that to take that step and actually get in touch with you or with someone, just to take that, leap to the future to see like, okay, let's see, because I think that's the problem.
Yeah. Ultimately, I mean, I lived in that self-denial and that toxic positivity for a long time as well, because our nervous system is just trying to do what it knows best. It doesn't like to change, changing is hard, and that's okay. Ultimately, we can't make a person be ready to start healing. It is an individual choice, and giving yourself the opportunity to just accept that might be a possibility, and that's enough. I would put more urgency potentially on the people around them that are seeing something maybe is happening, because quite often when you're in the box, you can't see the box, and so appreciating as well that quite often your potential support might be that it's been manipulated for that victim as a type of coerce. So when you look to try and give them support, they'll be like poison towards you as well. So what you can do as a concerned person is you can actually apply to, in the UK, Clare's Law. It's about the right to know whether or not a person has got domestic abuse in their history. As the third party person, you won't actually be privy to the information, but that individual that's in the relationship can be reached out to by the Metropolitan Police and be informed about the partner potentially. So that's Clare's Law. And similarly, for child endangerment as well, there's another law called Sarah's Law, which is the same thing, so that the person that's directly involved with it can then be given the information, and then they can make a more informed choice, because ultimately the opposite to fear is information, and then when we know more, we can make a better informed decision, and that's enough. So those are two opportunities that you can give to yourself to be able to help and support a person in that, as you say. And with regards to the individual, if they feel like they're finding something is wrong, to be aware and mindful of not displaying your cards per se, because quite often, as soon as a manipulative and abusive person understands that you're onto them with that coercive control, it will escalate. So you need to be able to go to your local domestic abuse charity or another national charity, or even myself, and look to working an exit strategy, and knowing where safe places are in your home. For instance, running to the bathroom and locking yourself in the bathroom is not necessarily a safe place, because there's a lot of hard surfaces in there, and it's invariably quite a weak lock. Running to the kitchen, again, a lot of hard surfaces and quite potentially lethal tools around. So knowing your exit strategy, if there's an argument going on and you're noticing that animosity, that you're walking on eggshells, and you can tell by a person's behavior if something's going to start, those triggers, you've seen the warning signs. So it's about making sure that you're in like a soft environment, maybe in the living room, where you've got places that are softer to go to, and also knowing how close to the exits you can be as well. And as much as it might be hard to kind of reach out, I found in my own personal experience that when I spoke to my neighbor, they were very understanding. They already kind of knew because they can hear it, right? It's just people don't want to interfere. But I had a lot of support with my neighbors and people, even though you're being told this story by the perpetrator that people hate you and you're the worst person, invariably when you go out and you find out and you speak with people, you know, they are normally a lot more compassionate than you've been led to believe. So
Amazing. Perfect. Thank you very much for sharing and for recommendation. I will include all the details about you in the description so people can reach out to you if they feel like it. So yeah, and thank you very much for being on my podcast. I really enjoyed it and definitely learned something new because never spoke with a person who is doing this specifically, like focusing on that, abuse. So it was good to find out more. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity, you should say, to bring that into the realm, and thank you so much for the other PSA, and I'll be definitely looking into that.
Check it out. Yeah, check it. I think it'll be good for you.
Yeah,
awesome. So how did you enjoy the podcast in general?